Good morning. Welcome to summer solstice, the longest day of the year. I have asked Mark Scouten, Director of Department of Homeland Security Emergency Management, and Roxanne Ryan, our Commissioner of Public Safety, to join the Lieutenant Governor and I this morning to talk about Iowa's efforts as they relate to See Something, Say Something campaign. The recent mass shooting in Orlando and other acts of violence that have occurred in the United States and abroad have left Iowans feeling nervous and uneasy. Lieutenant Governor and I receive a monthly intelligence briefing, and we are aware that there are threats. There are threats from Islamic extremists in all 50 states. And there's also criminal threats as well that we're aware of. It is understandable that we sometimes feel fearful at this type of violence and want to prevent it from happening in our state. However, there are things that we all can do to increase the safety of our communities, our state, and our entire nation. And that is to be on the lookout and to report any suspicious activity that we might see. I'm sure you all have heard the phrase, if you see something, say something, which is a nationwide initiative of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. The goals of See Something, Say Something are to raise public awareness of the indicators of terrorism and terrorism-related crime, and also the importance of reporting suspicious activity to law enforcement. Many of the attacks that have occurred in the U.S. have been the acts of terrorism, and it's important that we encourage public awareness and reporting of these suspicious activities. Today, we are reminding Iowans to pay attention to their surroundings, and if they see something that looks suspicious, report it to local law enforcement. We also have a role to play in our own safety, and it's important to protect against terrible incidents like the mass shooting that we just recently witnessed in Orlando. However, that doesn't mean that we stop living our normal lives or live in fear. But we need to pay more attention. We need to be aware that if we see something suspicious, we need to speak up. As individuals, we can make a difference. Director Scouten and Commissioner Ryan will tell you about the state's efforts to engage Iowans in reporting suspicious activities. But I want to turn it over to Lieutenant Governor Kim Reynolds to tell you more about this subject. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you, Governor Branstad. As Governor stated, we feel it is especially important that Iowans know the role that they play in keeping themselves, their families, and their communities safe. The See Something, Say Something campaign was developed several years ago by the NYC Transportation Authority, and in 2010, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security launched the campaign nationwide, and they've partnered with government at all levels and as well as the private sector with a focus on increasing awareness of terrorism and reporting suspicious activity to law enforcement. The state of Iowa, through the Department of Homeland Security and the Emergency Management, as well as the Department of Public Safety, has worked with the Federal Homeland Security to promote the See Something, Say Something campaign. You may have seen, hopefully, you saw signs of it at the Iowa State Fair promoting See Something, Say Something. And this has been a joint effort not only between the state, but with the State Fair to, again, help increase awareness at an event that draws hundreds of thousands of people each year. Most recently, the departments have worked with the Federal Department of Homeland Security to produce posters for use by local law enforcement and emergency management agencies to promote suspicious activity reporting, again, just encouraging people to report what they see. Now the departments are working on a new public awareness effort that will feature a series of radio public service announcements, and Director or Dr. Scouten will tell you more about this in a moment. With increased travel in the summer and the prevalence of large events, including the July 4th celebrations, this is a crucial time to ask for public's help in preventing another large-scale tragedy. So again, we ask Iowans to please be vigilant. If they see something, report it to law enforcement. And now it's my pleasure to bring to the podium Director Scouten to give you more information on the initiative. Director?
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. As the Governor and Lieutenant Governor said, we as citizens have an important role to play in the safety and security of our community, our state, and our country. And that role starts with paying attention to activity that is suspicious or doesn't match the usual pattern of activity that is part of our daily lives. As we go about our days, going to work, school, shopping, or traveling, if you see something that is out of the ordinary, something that shouldn't be there, or someone's behavior that doesn't seem right and causes you suspicion, contact your local law enforcement. Following the Orlando mass shooting, U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson said it is the protection of our homeland that is the #1 priority because of our current threat environment. He also said that see something, say something is more than just a slogan, and that in addition to the role that government plays, the public plays an important role in the security of our homeland. That's true for Iowa too. It is our responsibility as Iowans to be vigilant and to act. And when we see something that isn't right and could endanger the safety of our citizens and our communities. To bring greater awareness to the importance of looking for and reporting suspicious activity and behavior, Iowa Homeland Security and Emergency Management and the Iowa Department of Public Safety are preparing a See Something, Say Something campaign to reach Iowans statewide. The campaign will feature a series of radio public service messages that will talk about what to watch out for and how to report suspicious activity or behavior. We expect to launch the public service messages later this month, just in time for the 4th of July holiday, and they will run through the end of the month of July. We also are asking our law enforcement and emergency management partners to help spread the See Something, Say Something message in their communities. And we also will ask that all Iowans help to spread this important message too. Thank you.
I'd like to address a little more specifically just exactly what we mean by suspicious behavior. Suspicious activity really refers to behavior and not just personal characteristics of people. You should keep in mind that when people are going to be committing serious offenses, they don't usually just do it on a spur of the moment. They usually are making preparatory plans. They're conducting surveillance. They're collecting weaponry. They're practicing, doing trial runs. They're identifying victims and vulnerabilities. This is behavior that is observable and should be reported to law enforcement. When an individual shifts from talk to action and actually takes steps toward committing a crime, that's when law enforcement intervention is most important, and we may actually be able to prevent these tragic incidents from occurring in the first place. Some of the observations create concern, some greater concern just inherently. For example, explosives are inherently dangerous. They require certification for people to possess them or use them. So if there are reports of explosives, that's taken very seriously. It's the kind of thing that should be reported immediately to law enforcement by calling 911. Poisonous chemicals in large quantities also are particularly dangerous and should be reported immediately. Any people who provide detailed descriptions of how they would shoot people or how they would carry out a major event, those details indicate that they have taken those preliminary steps and they should be taken seriously. There are also some of the other Less immediate concerns that also should be reported: unattended vehicles or packages in areas where they are seldom seen, or in an area where there are large gatherings of people should immediately be reported to law enforcement. An individual who is watching a building or a location repeatedly or for long periods of time with no indications of meeting a person or conducting business there, or having any other legitimate purpose for being there should be reported to police. An individual who is seeking information about a place or a person that goes beyond mere curiosity or business needs also is worth reporting to law enforcement. When you are observing behavior that seems unusual or it's not easily explained, report it to local law enforcement or call 911. Give as many details as possible about who, what, where, when, why, and how those things are occurring. The specific descriptions that are particularly helpful for law enforcement: license plate numbers, descriptions of vehicles, distinguishing features or clothing of individuals that you see, detailed descriptions of the behavior itself, statements or questions that are asked that raise concerns, the location of the encounter that you had with the individual, or the potential target that they are asking about. Iowans have a very strong sense of community. They often can tell what behavior is unusual. They're also likely to notice a change in behavior by family members or friends, and those are the kinds of things that when you see some of those things that seem out of the ordinary, you should say something to law enforcement about that. Sense of community also means that our local law enforcement agencies are best equipped to respond to these kinds of reports. Sometimes the behavior has innocent explanations, and sometimes it helps us to prevent terrible things from occurring. Without those tips from the public, though, law enforcement is at a disadvantage, and we are not able to detect as many things as we could if people are living up to the see something, say something motto. Thank you.
Okay, we would be glad to answer your questions. Yes.
Did you recently receive information that causes you to be concerned? You're talking a lot about lives. There's something going on.
First of all, we get a monthly briefing, and we know that there are potential problems and people that are suspicious that law enforcement is already tracking. So it's important. We don't have anything specific related to the 4th of July. We know the Islamic terrorists have said they're looking for soft targets. And when you have events like on the 4th of July where you have large gatherings of people, there's a chance to have massive killings occur. We saw that at the Boston Marathon. We saw that recently in Orlando. So those are the kinds of things that we need to be aware of, and that's why it's important for people to indeed be very alert to the threats. Yes.
You're supporting Donald Trump. He has said that Muslims shouldn't be allowed to enter the United States. Do you support that?
Well, first of all, Donald Trump is not the enemy. The enemy is radical Islamic terrorists that want to kill us. Different people have different ideas on how to combat that. I believe this administration has not taken the threat seriously. The concern I have is today they're going to release the transcripts of the killer from Orlando, but they're going to redact all reference to ISIS and radical Islamic activities. I just saw Rudy Giuliani interviewed on that this morning. He's a former prosecutor, and he said, that's the very motive for this massive killing. And and American people should be shared that information. So I think what Donald Trump is doing is saying, we need to take this threat seriously. I think that this administration has failed to take it seriously, and we've had one incident after another of tragic occurrences. And unless we get really vigilant, we're trying to do what we can at the state and local level, but we as a nation have to be aware of the real threat and the fact that we have a whole cadre of people throughout the world that are committed to this Islamic radical ideology that says if you don't share our viewpoint, then we're going to kill you.
Are there other groups besides?
You still didn't answer my question. Do you support prohibiting Muslims from entering the United States?
Well, first of all, I think it's a little more nuanced than that. What he has said is those from terrorist nations are the ones that we ought to be focused on. I'm concerned that the federal government is not sharing information with us about people that are coming from those terrorist nations that may be placed in our states. I don't want to put Iowans at risk. So I want to protect the safety and well-being of Iowans. That's why we're doing this.
So why are you doing something at the federal government? Why are you replicating a program in the federal government? If they're not taking the threat seriously, why are you replicating something that they're doing?
We're not saying that everything they're doing is wrong. We're just saying they're not taking the threat seriously enough. They won't even release the transcripts. They're redacting the transcripts of what the killers said. American people have a right to see that information. This administration, for some reasons, thinks we as Americans can't handle the truth. We can. We need to know the truth. We need to know the seriousness of the threat, and that we have people in this country that have been radicalized by this ideology that are committed to killing us. And they've acted again and again. And they will if we are not careful.
Are there other groups besides Muslims that you're concerned about?
We're concerned about anybody that's a threat to the American people.
Who else would be a threat?
There's all kinds of threats. We get, and a lot of this is classified, so we can't, but there's drug lords and there's people involved in those activity. There's the criminal, the organized crime elements, and you know, it goes on and on. So there's a lot of threats out there, and I'm just amazed every month when we get a briefing at Public Safety, the extent of the threats and the dangers that we have, and that's why we have to take all of these things seriously. The biggest threat is from Islamic terrorism, but we have many other threats.
Should people be vigilant about watching what's happening at Iowa Mosque?
They should be vigilant about things that are happening anywhere in our state. And they certainly, if they see people that are making threatening statements or are, you know, doing surveillance of locations where people meet, those are the kinds of things, as Roxanne mentioned, that people should report.
Are you worried about hate crimes against Iowans who are Muslim?
We're worried about protecting the safety of all of our citizens, regardless. And we recognize that there are those that hate us and that want to kill us. And we certainly want to make sure that we're doing all we can to get that information to appropriate law enforcement.
Do you think it's important that the focus is on radical Islamic terrorism, or do you take a broader view saying it should be terrorism in general?
The greatest threat to our well-being right now is radical Islamic terrorism. So I think we need to focus on the greatest threat. That doesn't mean we should ignore the other threats.
Is that
Be-
part why you say Obama is taking it seriously?
Yes.
And using that phrase, radical Islamic?
Well, it's not that he's not using the phrase, and now he wants to redact the statements of the killer. The American people should be given all the information. And our nation's leadership's unwillingness to identify the people that they identify themselves as ISIS, they're an Islamic State, and they want to kill us. They want to destroy Israel. They've made it really clear where they stand. And we need to take that threat seriously because they've acted again and again. You know, they've acted at the Boston Marathon. They've in Chattanooga, in California, Orlando, and it's, you know, the amount of incidents has gone up and up and up. That's why I say they haven't taken it seriously enough.
And do you feel like you can make the distinction between targeting radical Islamic terrorism and just targeting?
Sure. just because somebody goes to a particular a mosque or whatever, that's not an issue. The question is, are they making statements about, we want to kill all these people that don't share our viewpoint, which the person that committed this crime in Orlando did, which the people in San Bernardino did, which the people in Boston did, which, you know, you can go on and on and on and on, connecting the dots, and you see there's a common thread here. They have been radicalized, and they are committed to committing some terrible act against Americans. And ISIS is really saying, you know, find soft targets where you can kill a lot of people. And so this is not something that is imagined. This is part of their ideology, and this is what they are preaching. And they're not only in the mosque, they're doing it on the internet and many other ways.
Question in relation to gays. You're aware there was this incident where somebody broke a window at the Blazing Saddle here last week, and some Christians agreed to cover the cost. But I believe there's been other incidents involving that establishment. Is there any special concern about the fact that gay people in Iowa, I don't know if you folks have any response to that, if gay people in Iowa are especially potential targets, and that they would be soft targets if somebody wanted to walk into one of these clubs?
We need to take that threat serious. And everybody needs to be treated with respect and dignity. And if we have people that are making threats against the gay community or any other group, Christians, Muslims, I don't care who they are, we need to be vigilant, and we need to report threatening acts or statements that are being made. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Just add one thing. We've actually, the Department of Public Safety has led the way when it comes to hate crimes training for law enforcement, not only within our department, but local agencies as well. For people who are targeted because of their personal characteristics, they certainly feel at greater risk, and they feel unsafe. They are less likely to report because it may make other people who share those characteristics feel less safe. So we understand the risk that there is whenever there is any kind of a hate threat that is made. We take those very, very seriously.
Other questions?
For Director Ryan, to piggyback off that, there was a report by the Associated Press a month or so ago that on hate crime reporting by local law enforcement agencies, Iowa had one of the highest rates of local agencies not filing any reports, whether they were dealing with hate crimes or not filing reports in the federal government. That's the new your department is talking about.
I hate to be a geek about this, but there are some concerns about the statistics that were used. I think they don't act that do not regulate and in other sources that we've tried to find. So I think there were some statistical anomalies in the way that the information was used in that report. I think we do a good job, and we do regularly talk about hate crimes with local law enforcement agencies.
Well, I don't have a specific role, but I am the governor of the state of Iowa, and I am supportive of the entire Republican ticket, and Donald Trump is going to be the nominee of our party. So I want to do what I can to help him, Senator Grassley, all four of our congressional candidates, and our candidates for the Senate and the House. And I'm certainly going to do all I can. I think people know me well that I'm not a shrinking violet. I tend to be one that gets proactively involved, and I certainly intend to in this campaign as I have in the past.
That was the big question I had. Were you surprised when your son got the news? Did you kind of know for a while this was going to happen?
No, well, as I mentioned at the time, I had members of my staff that knew more about it than I did. So I had to call my son and ask him about it. I do know that he got to know Donald Trump when he was handling the bipartisan alliance for renewables. And as a result of that, he went with Donald Trump to the ethanol plant in Gowrie. He was impressed with the knowledge of the industry that Trump demonstrated and the questions that he asked. And obviously he became a supporter of renewables, and that's an important issue for Iowa. In fact, most of the candidates of both parties at least expressed support, but I think Donald Trump has been probably more forthright and open about that than many of the others.
I have
Yes.
a question in regards to, just back to terrorism and 4th of July. Are there any special plans to have, like, any additional law enforcement people on duty, or any special, is the Emergency Operations Center going to be open at Camp Dodge or anything like that?
We typically do that for large events. So there's nothing that would be particularly different this year than what we've seen at other big events. So generally, when you have larger crowds, you have a whole lot more law enforcement people there. And we monitor those large events all the time, not just this time.
I would say that, we are blessed to live in one of the safest states in the country. And I want to give credit to our state and local law enforcement for the vigilance. We want to give them the support and the assistance that they need. We want an informed and active citizen involvement to help prevent the tragedies that have occurred in too many places throughout this country and throughout the world recently.
Governor, the Trump campaign got rid of its national campaign manager this morning, it sounds like, or at least finally confirmed that he was out. What is going wrong with the campaign?
Well, I think they're in the process of retooling the campaign to get ready for the general election. A lot of people have counted Donald Trump out time and time again. I'm not one of them. I've learned through experience that we underestimated what he might be able to accomplish. And I think he's in the process now of kind of retooling the campaign and focusing on the general election. I know my son has said that since he was named, and actually he's not been officially named yet, the word is out on it, and but they haven't formalized that. But he said he's gotten a phenomenal amount of responses of people that have stepped forward and said we want to help. So he's kind of encouraged about that. I talked to him a little bit about it over the weekend.
Did Corey Ladowski hire Eric, and is Eric's tenure with the campaign now in doubt?
I don't think so. The person that he met with originally in Washington, D.C., he's been gone for a while. And now Lewandowski's, yeah. Well, I don't even remember the name of the guy, but yeah, the guy that he met with in D.C. was gone shortly thereafter. Then he was in New York for a meeting, I think, last week. And anyway, he's excited about getting involved in it. And it's certainly a different campaign than we've ever seen before. I think America is at a critical crossroads. And I think we've underestimated the threat that we have to us. And we need strong leadership that's going to take this threat seriously and restore America's strength. We want to make America great again, as the Trump campaign has said. I think a lot of Americans identify with that. They don't think the country's on the right track. They haven't seen their incomes keep up with inflation. They see the national debt spiraling out of control. And that's the reason why I think a lot of people are attracted to a non-traditional candidate who's not part of the DC establishment and is willing to shake things up and put us on a new direction.
Governor, you know as well as anyone how to win an election.
Yep.
Hillary Clinton is already showing signs of campaign staff and grassroots staff here in Iowa. Other than your son's hiring, haven't seen as much of that yet from Donald Trump. Is he falling behind on the grassroots?
Well, it's a non-traditional campaign that he's run, and I'm sure will run. But I think he's going to bring in some professionals that have been through campaigns before that can help him in doing this. And I would just say, don't count him out. I've been through a lot of campaigns, and I've never lost an election, but I've been predicted to lose time and time again.
Along the same lines, the Democrats battled out their party platform over the weekend. As a Republican, how often did you just completely disregard what was in the platform as a candidate?
Well, first of all, the platform is a statement of the grassroots, and it doesn't necessarily represent the views of the candidates. So, but one of the things the Democrats decided to do or recommend is eliminating superdelegates. And I think that's one of the things that's been unfair and undemocratic about the Democratic nomination process. And I think it's been brought out very clearly. This idea of people that are automatically delegates, super delegates because they're elected officials, I think most Americans think is wrong. That needs to change. And that's something that I'm glad to see the grassroots of the Democrats agree. Republicans don't have super delegates. So I think that's a good thing. Yeah.
Last question, you're probably aware of State Senator David Johnson is never Trump. He's changing his party registration. Ben Sasse and in the next state won't go along with Trump. There's been a number, at least several Republicans, prominent nationally as well as the Bushes, who aren't supporting Trump. What do you say to those folks? What's your response to State Senator David Johnson, who's changing party status, could threaten the control of the Iowa Senate?
Well, he's not up for election, and I think he's made a mistake. I would love to have him reconsider that. He comes from a very Republican area, and I think a lot of people up there think he should support his constituents. I would just say that obviously individuals have the right to make their own decision. What I appreciate is the fact that we've gone through a process that attracted a tremendous amount of people to the Republican Party. The turnout in the Iowa caucuses was the biggest we ever had by over 50%. And I respect the fact that, we had 17 candidates, and obviously not everybody is satisfied that their choice, their first choice was not the nominee. But this is the way the system works. And I believe in the system, and I believe in Iowans, and I'm going to do everything I can to try to support Donald Trump, Chuck Grassley, all the congressional candidates, the entire ticket. And I think we got a great opportunity. I think we got a great opportunity to win the Senate, continue to maintain control of the House. And we're going to do everything we can to try to help that entire ticket. And then it's up to the individual voters to make the decision. But I've always respected the voters of Iowa. And obviously, I'm very appreciative that they have given me the opportunity to serve as governor of this state 6 times. And I respect that they're going to make a decision. And I think Iowa's going to be one of the battleground states. And I'm very hopeful that we will have a great result come November.
Thank you.
Thank you.